Hey everyone, welcome to Uncomplicate by Freshworks, where we answer one question every day with one expert. In case you're listening to this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So today's Uncomplicate, I have Craig Stoss, who is the Director of Platform Support at Arctic Wolf Network. Welcome to Uncomplicate, Craig.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, Craig is here to talk about a problem that a lot of growing companies face, especially if you have a lot of people who are customer facing. How do you scale your culture and, set your goals for if you have a lot of people who are customer facing, right? Because you have your pre-sales team, sales team, support, pretty much everyone who are customer facing. So how do you set goals for them? And how do you do it at scale, Craig?
Yeah, I think the key to goal setting is that everyone is aligned towards a certain big overarching goal at the corporate level.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you need to do is make sure that no matter how many employees or how many different teams are involved in your company or that are customer facing, you all have an overarching goal that everyone is striving for.
Mm-hmm.
And how a success manager resolves that goal or achieves that goal may be different than a support leader or maybe different than a pre-sales engineer, but together they all must be going towards the same goal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just have one follow-up question because since you've handled or been at a leadership position in customer-facing roles, could you give me let's say an example of what a good goal could be, cutting across all customer-facing teams, and how could each team go about kind of achieving that goal?
Absolutely. Yeah, so perhaps maybe you have a very generic goal at your corporate level to increase revenue or decrease margins or something that has to do with the finances of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those goals might be not as tangible to a support rep. How does a support rep help you reduce margins, or a support rep, a success manager help you increase revenue? That's not as obvious. But if you make the goal, the piece of the goal that's relevant to the individual, relevant to them and achievable and tangible to the individual. So for example, maybe you incentivize support reps to look at places where automation can help, or incentivize them to make sure the knowledge base is high quality. Maybe in the success world, maybe you start incentivizing renewals differently than upsells, for example. In the pre-sales engineers, maybe there's incentives to cut down the time to onboarding in order to provide more value faster to your customers.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those individual goals are much more tangible to the person doing them and to the team doing them, but they all achieve the same thing at the corporate level, which is to increase revenue or decrease margins.
Okay, so if I'm getting this right, it's more about having one overarching goal and breaking it down to smaller goals which are very specific to that team, right?
Yes, goals only really work when people understand what they're working towards.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the key is that if I go to the average individual contributor or even the average line manager in a company and say, you need to increase revenue, that's a very nebulous goal at that level, and it needs to be much more clear what that means at each team's level. And at scale, you can actually do it to the individual. So for example, if you have someone on your team that it's very knowledge centered or has a technical writing background, maybe their way of achieving a better margin is different than someone who is more technically minded and is more focused on solving deep technical issues. But they're still on the same team doing similar work. It's just that their contribution to the high corporate goal is different.
Okay, awesome. I got it. So I think it's more about saying, hey, customer support or any function that you are in, it's about tying the contribution of your work to the overall overarching goal of the company. So I think
Correct.
Yes, I think that was something that's very tangible, and I'm hoping that our listeners just go back to their work and start implementing this straight away. Thank you for joining for this episode of Uncomplicate, Craig. It was a pleasure hosting you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes.